Did you have any internships, Keri?
Did I have internships? No, I've had a lot of interns over the years. When I worked in entertainment, I had a lot of people do internships with us who wanted to get work in music or comedy. But no, I didn't do. I had jobs when I was in college. I worked at the Duke Primate Center, which is now called the Lemur Center. So
Aww.
which is a great job. And then I worked at a couple of, it was like the college thing. I worked at video stores. I did restaurants, like all that kind of stuff.
So Keri, like you used to manage comics, and I assume at that time when you were kind of an SJW that the comics were more left leaning. Have they kind of like reached out to you, or like do you still have a relationship with these comics now that you've sort of like turned away from the left?
No, with the exception of Krystyna Wong, who I adore. But the others did what typical SJWs do, which is they disassociate from you once you start criticizing the ideology. Because social justice warriors, for the most part, they don't have friends and they have allies. And if you,
that word,
yeah. So if you separate from the ideology or you start criticizing it, they cut off contact like a cult. You're excommunicated. You're a dangerous person now. You're a heretic. And so, like, one of my clients was W. Kamau Bell, who's a super social justice warrior. And when I first started working with him, I was a true believer. You have to understand, like, I believed in this. I fell into it in college. So I was in it for 20 years. And I really believed what it says it's about. I thought it was about, this is a good thing to do. This is being a good person in the world.
Yep.
This is how you eradicate racism and sexism, as you push this belief system. And so I tended to work with comics like him who pushed it in their work. And we did the show Totally Biased together, which was very explicitly social justice. And then the last thing I sold with him was the CNN show that he's on right now, which is way far gone social justice. Like, he and I went like two ships in the night, different directions. After 2016, that's when I started waking up. And a lot of my friends, see, it was weird because now I started coming out of this ideology that I used to be one of the only people pushing it in my world. Like, I was hardcore, true believer. And then I saw people who had never been believers. They were going the other way. So 2016, these like acceleration points, we had another one last year.
Whenever these pick a side.
Yes, the acceleration points, they either force more conformity. So you get all these late joiners, these late bloomer joiners who jump on the bandwagon, or they cause people who are in it to wake up to see, because things get ramped up and you can suddenly see better. Like, wait a minute, this is censorship. Like, what? This isn't what I thought it was. Or you're beating people up in the streets because they went to a Trump rally. Like, that's not what I'm about. So he and a lot of other comedians I worked with, they just doubled down on social justice in the past 4 or 5 years, where I was completely, whatever. I was called all kinds of names. Red pill, troll, like alt-right, whatever, all the names.
It doesn't take much to be called alt-right. Right. I was telling, Joe DeVito this, like, the other day. He's a comic, and that was a big life lesson. Like, I had the same personality and sense of humor when I was hosting comedy at Stonewall for 6 years, and I had tons of gay friends, and I was like actively scouting LGBT talent, and had the most fun doing that show. But I am the same person I was then as I am when I got my show on Compound Media. Like, I was just like, well, I can't do both. And Stonewall was like getting harder and harder because I would put my own money into the advertising. The general manager was like, oh, we need to like cancel your show for like an urgent Madonna sing along. And that happened like a couple times a year. And I had to realize, like, yeah, comedy is not their priority. They're a national landmark. Like, they can fill the room with just like regular gay events. And I understood that. And this guy was not a comedy fan himself. So I was like so constantly bending over backwards. And like most producers or comics in New York City know, like, to last 6 years is like almost impossible. It's usually most shows last like a year or two or something. And I felt like hosting that show was like part of my identity. Like, I remember when I got the Compound Media show, I was like, oh, it feels like it's who I am, but I had to give it up because it was like a little bit holding me back. And I just was putting so much into it. But I'm the same person, same sense of humor. And when I started Compound Media, like people see compound media as like on the right. And I just noticed like, who's kissing my ass, like who's nice to me completely changed. It's not like I started having people on the right kissing my ass. What I gained were like actual fans who would be able to discover me and, you know, that found me funny. Whereas like it was wild after 6 years of doing a show in New York City, tons of tourism, tons of, you know, you would think, oh, I'm getting tons of fans, but like, nope, I would mostly not have the repeat customers I would have on that show would be like my own friends and family. It was just like a tourism spot, and all that time that I put into like the movement and being an ally, it's like I never was like asked to be on a float or like pride. Not that that's what I demanded. I just to see what I got out of being an ally, a great ally for 6 years, still same person. But now I start doing compound media, and now I'm the enemy. Now I'm a radical alt-right person. It's really interesting. That I was like, wow, I'm the same person. I laugh at the same stuff. It's just where I put my comedy has changed, and now I'm like hated. And I had comics on the left like publicly like letting everybody know where they stand on me. People who I haven't like seen or spoken to in years. I would see like comments come up, and I'd be like I've said this on past shows.
You become part of somebody else's really cheap virtue signal.
Oh yeah, I was behind her in a bodega in 2011, and she's really changed. I would be like, wow, we took one improv. It's always the people you did improv with. Always people like from 10 years ago who like really knew you. And it's like, these people have my phone numbers. Like if you had a question about where I was heading, like a call, a text would have been nice. And there was this one girl from improv who I'm not trying to like make people humiliated publicly. I'm like not trying to do that. But since she was so out there about like how she used to know me from improv, and boy, I've really changed. And I was like, what the hell is her name? Bridget or something with a B. I was like, oh, Brooke. It's like Brooke Van Poppelen. I was like, Brooke, you have my number. Like you could call me at any time, text, like, and I know that you won't. Like I was tweeting that. I know you won't call me because I know this is all for show.
It's all for public.
Yeah.
There's so many weasels. I mean, the thing I'm learning as I get older, I guess I feel like I'm learning a lot of life lessons later in age because I was in that ideology for so long. It sort of stunted me. And in a lot of ways now in my early 40s, I'm like, I feel like I'm playing catch up. I'm learning a lot of things that some people learn in their 20s. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have the wrong, and some people probably never learn some of these things. So, but one thing that I've woken up to is like, there's so many weasels. There's so many people who are just, they're rooted in just everything fake and lies. And it's like the Bible verse about, you know, you are from your father, the devil. Like you are from, it's like the people who really like are rooted in untruth, and they're doing things for show. They're virtue signaling. They're using your name and shitting on you in public so they can get virtue points for it and their cult of belief. And it's not just restricted to social justice. People do that. This is just human nature. Is like there are people who are, I think, unmoored and people who try to stay grounded and conscious. And I used to be unmoored. I used to be completely unmoored. And
I think that's why when you get so like triggered, to me, I visualize like old paint on a house. It's old, it's chipping off. And it's like, you don't want to do the work to scrape off all that old paint. You don't want to have to sandblast. You don't want to have to power wash. But you know, you're like, you know what? Let me just quickly paint another layer of paint on top of this. It's like, we know it's crumbling, but you're like feverishly like, oh, I'm triggered. I gotta like put this back up. It's much harder to like break down your beliefs and be like, oh, well, why is this triggering me? This shouldn't trigger me. And I noticed this guy, he's like a comedy journalist. I think his name is, this is Seth Simons. There's only like two of these like comedy journalists who like don't live in New York, but they love to shit on like the comedy scene, anybody who's doing well. And a fan of mine, this might've been Chrissie Mayr's boobs on Twitter. I hate to give them a shout out, but
what a funny,
anyway, so they discovered my own two boobs discovered that this guy Seth was using my name and Anthony Cumia's name in his articles as key words, but the articles didn't mention either of us. It's just we were used as keywords. So anybody who's searching for either of our names, his work will come up regardless. His articles, even if they're not about us at all. And I was just like, oh wow, that's new. That's new.
That's
like being used for clickbait. Yeah.
Yeah. Cheap. By the way, I saw that account. It's like a fan account, right? Chrissie Mayr's boobs.
Mm-hmm.
I want someone to make Keri Smith's boots with a T.
Oh my God. Yes. Keri Smith's boots. And then they could be like, don't tread on me.
Don't tread. Yeah.
We'll do the treading.
Made for walking.
Or just like no step.
No step.
No step.
Nice.
Yeah.